I might be a little late to the party, but here goes. When I was around 10 years old, I spent part of my school holidays at my aunt and uncle's dairy farm. It was one of those places that felt like it hadn't changed in decades. Wide open paddocks, gravel roads that kicked up dust behind your boots, and the smell of hay, cows, and diesel lingering in the air. Their property was way out in the country, far from any town. It was quiet, the kind of quiet where you could hear your own heartbeat if you stopped and listened. I loved going there. I helped my uncle round up the cattle on motorbikes, which made me feel grown up. I'd get up before sunrise with them, pour milk over cold cereal in the dim kitchen light, then pull on my boots and follow them outside. The work was hard but simple, straightforward, and it felt good to be part of something. But there was one day that changed how I looked at that place. It made me realize that the quiet out there wasn't always peaceful. Sometimes it meant no one would hear you scream. It was cold and gray that morning, and the fog hadn't lifted even by mid-afternoon. The ground was damp, and the wind kept making the old tin shed creak like it had a voice of its own. My cousin, he was the same age as me, suggested we stay inside and watch movies instead of going out. That sounded good to me. We stayed in the den, a room lined with thick carpet and heavy, dark curtains pulled tight over the big glass doors that looked out toward the backyard. We closed them to keep the room dark and warm, made popcorn in the microwave, and lay down under blankets. After a while, my cousin got tired and went off to his room to take a nap. I stayed back and kept watching the movie alone. I don't remember what it was, probably some old action film with a lot of yelling and explosions. I do remember that the room felt especially quiet between the scenes, like something outside that glass was waiting for those moments of silence. Sounds stupid now, but I started to feel watched. I tried to shake it off. I remember pulling the blanket up to my neck, thinking maybe I was just scaring myself because I was alone. But the feeling didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. I looked over at the curtains. They were all drawn shut, except for one narrow gap where the fabric didn't quite reach all the way to the wall. And in that gap, for maybe a second, I saw something. The edge of a face. Just a sliver of skin, an eye, and a patch of red hair. Dirty red hair that looked tangled and matted. I froze. My body went cold. I didn't move. I just stared. But the face was gone as fast as it had appeared. I remember how the blood roared in my ears as I dove under the blanket. My heart was thumping so hard I thought it would shake the couch. I stayed like that for what felt like forever, just listening. Nothing happened. No sound of movement. No knock. No voice. When I finally worked up the nerve to look again, the gap was still there, but the face was gone. I got up, ran to my cousin's room, and shook him awake. We didn't even talk. I just told him we had to check the doors and windows. Every single one. We locked them all. That whole afternoon, we didn't go back outside. When my aunt and uncle got home, we told them what I'd seen. My uncle didn't say much, but I could tell he didn't quite believe it. Maybe he thought I was being a dramatic kid. After all, we were on a large property, far from any neighbors. Strangers didn't just wander onto land like that. You'd have to go out of your way to get there. But I knew what I saw. The next morning started off like any other. My uncle went out early to feed the dogs and check on the cattle. But about 10 minutes later, he came back. He was pale and his jaw was clenched tight. One of their work dogs, a big black and white one that always barked too much, was dead, hanging from a rope tied to the swing set in the backyard. I went out there and saw it with my own eyes. The dog's legs hung limp, tongue swollen and blue. The rope was a thick one, like the kind used to tie up gates. Someone had done it on purpose. I felt sick. This wasn't some wild animal attack. Someone had been in the yard, close enough to the house to touch the swing set, and we hadn't seen a thing. My aunt and uncle didn't argue with me anymore after that. They called the police, who came out later that day. They asked me to describe what I saw. All I could remember was the edge of that man's face. Red hair, dirty skin. That was it. Not much to go on. The cops looked around but didn't find any footprints or other signs. Just the dead dog and a couple pieces of cut rope. They filed a report, told my aunt and uncle to keep an eye out, and left. Nothing happened for a couple of days. I didn't sleep well. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, certain someone was outside my window. I kept thinking about how long that man had been watching us, how long he might have been hiding nearby. He could have been standing just beyond the curtain for an hour and I never would have known. Then my older cousin, he was about 17, decided to clean out the garage. It was a large tin shed, separate from the house, used mostly for storage. He went in, started moving things around, and noticed the loft. It was rarely used. Just a small wooden platform above the rafters, with a narrow ladder leading up to it. When he climbed up there, he found something that none of us had expected. Old clothes, men's clothes, dirty, worn-out jeans, a jacket, socks. There was a sleeping bag, too, crumpled in one corner like someone had just crawled out of it. Wrappers from food, mostly canned stuff, muesli bars, bread crusts, scattered on the floor. A couple empty bottles of water. Someone had been living there, not just for a night, for days, maybe weeks. Right there on the property, just a couple 100 feet from the house. The police came back again, took photos, collected what they could. But it didn't amount to much. No fingerprints, no ID, nothing to trace. They told my family it was probably some drifter, someone passing through. Maybe someone with mental health issues. The area had seen a few vagrants over the years, but never this far out. No one was ever caught. No red-haired man was ever identified. And the police didn't follow up after that. My aunt and uncle installed better locks and motion sensor lights. They got new dogs, but the feeling stayed with me long after I left. The knowledge that someone had been there watching us, hiding in plain sight. I don't think he came back. At least, nothing else happened during that trip or any visit after. But I still remember that day clearly. That face in the window, the silence of the foggy afternoon, and the swing set creaking in the wind, rope still tied to the top bar after they cut the dog down. Years have passed since then. I'm grown now, but I haven't forgotten any of it. The farm is still there. My aunt and uncle still live on the property. They don't talk about it anymore. Not because they've forgotten, but because sometimes there's nothing more to say. Some things just happen. You don't always get answers. And sometimes, the scariest part isn't what you see, it's what you almost missed. I never liked the woods much, but one evening I found myself walking into them anyway. It wasn't planned. I had gone out for some air after dinner, and instead of looping around the small road near my place, I wandered toward the tree line. The sun was sinking, and the sky had that dull gray look it gets when daylight is fading but night hasn't fully taken over. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice every crunch of gravel under your shoes. I followed a deer path that cut into the trees. The woods grew thick fast. The first 100 feet were thin trunks and tall weeds. Then it shifted into heavier growth where the air felt cooler and damp. The smell of wet leaves and dirt hung low. I could hear nothing except the faint rush of wind somewhere higher in the trees. Once I was deep enough, the light dropped almost instantly. It wasn't night yet, but under the canopy it might as well have been. My eyes worked harder to pick out shapes. Branches twisted over each other, forming shadows that bent in strange directions. I told myself I would just go a little further and then cut back. But once you start walking in woods like that, it's hard to judge distance. Every turn looks the same. Every tree feels like one you already passed. I tried to keep a mental map, a split in the trail by a stump, a cluster of rocks, a fallen log. But the deeper I went, the more the landmarks blurred. I couldn't tell if I was following a real trail or just a narrow gap where animals moved. About 20 minutes in, I noticed how heavy the silence was. No birds, no bugs, nothing. I had grown up hearing that silence in woods can mean something bigger is nearby, something that pushes the smaller creatures into hiding. I tried not to think about that, but I couldn't stop my ears from straining for any sound. A snapping twig, a breath of movement, anything. The air grew cooler the further I went. My arms had goosebumps. I rubbed them, but it didn't help. There was a dampness that clung to everything. Even the leaves looked heavy with it, sagging toward the ground. The soil gave a little under each step, like it had soaked up more water than it could hold. I started to feel uneasy about how far I had come. I turned around, thinking I'd just retrace my steps, but the path behind me didn't look right. I didn't see the fallen log I had passed or the stump I'd marked in my head. Everything blended together. I kept walking anyway, convincing myself I would recognize something soon. The deeper I went, the more twisted the trees looked. Their roots jutted up from the soil like bones. In places, they tangled together, forming shapes that forced me to step carefully or climb over. My breathing grew louder. I could hear it echo inside my head, fast and uneven. Then I caught a smell. It wasn't the earthy, damp smell I'd noticed earlier. This was sharper, sour, like old garbage or rotting meat. I froze where I stood, trying to figure out where it came from. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to make the back of my throat tighten. I scanned the trees. The shadows didn't move, but the smell hung there. I couldn't tell if it was drifting closer or if I had just walked into the edge of it. I started moving faster, keeping my eyes on the ground so I wouldn't trip over the roots. My heart thumped harder with every step. The smell would fade, then grow stronger again, like I was circling it without meaning to. That's when I realized I didn't know which way was out anymore. I had turned too many times. I tried to calm myself. I thought just pick a direction and keep going. If I kept straight long enough, I'd hit a road or a clearing. So I picked a line between two tall trees and went for it. My legs ached from stepping over roots and pushing through low branches. My jeans caught on thorns. My arms were scratched from twigs I didn't see in time. Sweat soaked my back even though the air was cool. The smell returned, thicker this time. My stomach twisted with it. I wanted to cover my nose, but I didn't trust my hands to block branches if I couldn't see them coming. I kept going until I saw a darker shape ahead. For a second, I thought it was just another tree, but the closer I got, the clearer it became. It was something on the ground. I stopped short when I saw it. It was an animal or what was left of one. Hard to tell what kind, maybe a deer. The body was torn open, ribs showing white through the mess. Flies buzzed in a faint cloud above it. The smell was thickest here. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get air past it. I backed away, careful not to make noise. My mind was racing. Something had done that. It wasn't a clean kill either. It looked shredded, like it had been pulled apart. I didn't want to think about what could do that, but the silence in the woods made it worse. It meant whatever had killed it could still be close. I turned and moved as fast as I could without running. Running would mean tripping, falling, maybe not getting up in time. My ears strained for sound, but all I could hear was my own breathing. Every step felt like it took too long. My legs felt heavy, like the ground was holding them down. After what felt like forever, I noticed the trees thinning. More light filtered through. The air didn't feel as wet, and the smell was gone. Relief pushed me forward, but I didn't stop. I kept moving until I finally broke out onto a strip of gravel. A road. I stood there, bent over, catching my breath, sweat cooling on my back. I looked both ways, trying to place where I was. The road stretched empty in both directions. I didn't recognize it right away, but I knew it had to connect somewhere. I followed it, legs shaky, eyes darting to the tree line every few seconds. Eventually, after what felt like miles, I saw the faint glow of a streetlight. My chest loosened at the sight. Civilization, a sign I was close to safety. I kept going until I reached it, and from there, I knew my way home. When I finally got inside, I sat down on the floor and just listened. The hum of the fridge, the faint buzz of a street outside. Ordinary sounds I had never really noticed before. They felt like the most comforting thing in the world after that silence. I didn't tell anyone about what I saw. I didn't want to try to explain it. But ever since that night, I haven't set foot in those woods again. Every time I drive past the tree line, I feel that same tightness in my chest, the same warning I ignored when I first stepped in. I know what's out there, and I know I was lucky to walk back out. I was about 18, driving a Honda Ridgeline that wasn't mine, just borrowing it from a friend, somewhere outside of Kittitas, Washington. It's this tiny, dusty town that feels like it's stuck in time, middle of nowhere. It was late, past 10 for sure, but I'd been bored, restless, and just wanted to find a high spot somewhere out in the hills, park, and light up. Weed wasn't legal yet, and I wasn't trying to make a scene. I just wanted to get high alone with a nice view and maybe watch the lights of the valley or whatever. Just zone out. That's all I wanted. Once the pavement ended, I was on dirt roads. Bumpy, narrow, sometimes washboard, the kind that makes your teeth rattle if you go too fast. I was driving slow, around 25 to 30, just cruising. I passed this property off to the left. It stood out because it was so damn run down. There was this massive industrial shed type thing, real ugly, like something you'd see on a construction site or a junkyard. The land was trashed. Rusted out cars, broken down ATVs, piles of wood and scrap metal. No lights except one dim bulb over the door. Just looked empty and angry. There was a truck parked outside though, an older model, maybe a Chevy or Dodge, hard to tell in the dark. Faded red paint, mismatched doors. Looked like it had been through some stuff. I didn't stop or slow down, just glanced at it as I passed. Figured whoever owned it was inside sleeping or drunk or both. Either way, I didn't care. I kept driving. The road went on a while, winding, then finally started heading up a big hill, steep with switchbacks and loose rocks. I figured this was the spot. I hadn't seen any no trespassing signs or fences, just open dirt roads and hills. I was halfway up when I checked my rear view and saw headlights behind me, bouncing with the road. That truck, the same red, beat-up truck from that trashy place. It was tailing me. At first, I thought maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe he was just heading this way too. But no, he was too close, riding my ass, trying to make a point. I couldn't speed up too much because of the terrain, but I wasn't going slow either. The guy was pushing me. My heart started to pound. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I kept telling myself, just driving, but it felt wrong now. I felt like I'd wandered somewhere I shouldn't be. When I got to the top of the hill, the road widened into this flat, open area. Just dirt and brush, but a perfect view of the valley below. Would have been a perfect spot to park, light up, and just sit. But I didn't even get the chance. The guy in the truck gunned it, swung around me, and cut me off, his tires spitting gravel everywhere. I slammed on the brakes hard enough to jolt me forward, heart in my throat. I thought maybe he was trying to scare me, some angry farmer or whatever, but then he got out. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Mid-40s maybe, but rough. Dirty jeans, stained shirt, long unwashed hair tied back, and something wild in his eyes. He stormed over to my window, so I cracked it just enough to hear him, engine still running. He started yelling immediately, said I was speeding, said I almost hit his kids, said I was going 60 past his place. I hadn't seen a single sign of children, no toys, no bikes, nothing, but I wasn't going to argue. I just apologized, said I was cruising, looking for a place to hang out. I was calm on the outside, but my skin was crawling. Then he leaned down, looked through the cracked window with this weird smirk, and asked if I was high. I said no, obviously. Then he asked if I wanted to get high. The tone of his voice when he asked, something about it just felt off. I shook my head. That's when he asked if I had a gun. I said no, and then he just sort of smiled to himself like that confirmed something for him. He said, "Yeah, you never know who has a gun these days, do you?" I didn't respond, just looked at him. My hand was on the shifter. I was already planning my escape. The calmness in his voice was scarier than the yelling. Then he told me to lower the window or he'd break it. Not like a threat, just matter of fact, like he'd done it before. Everything in my body screamed, "Get the hell out of here." I said nothing, just stared at him for a beat. And then, probably the only moment of courage I had that night, I said, "Fuck off," threw the ridgeline in reverse, and floored it. Rocks flew up and the tires kicked dust all over the guy as I tore backward down the hill. He yelled something, but I didn't hear it. I saw him sprinting to his truck in my rear view, and I knew he was going to chase me. I thought for sure he was grabbing a gun. I imagined a rifle coming up and glass shattering behind my head. I ducked a little without thinking. He got in and started chasing me. His headlights were close, too close. Every bump and dip I hit rattled through the whole frame of the truck. I was gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I took corners way too fast. I was sliding around, trying not to flip or hit a ditch, but I didn't slow down. No way. He was still behind me. I don't know how far he chased me. Could have been half a mile. Could have been 5. My brain was running on fear and adrenaline, so time felt all messed up. But at some point, I looked back and didn't see his headlights anymore. Just open dark road behind me, dust hanging in the air. I didn't stop driving though. Not until I hit pavement again. Not until I saw actual streetlights. I pulled over near a tiny gas station outside of town and just sat there, shaking, breathing like I just run a marathon. I didn't call the cops. Didn't tell anyone right away. Who would believe me? Some crazy guy chased me through the hills because he thought I was going 60 past his junkyard? No proof. No video. Nothing. And I was high, or at least planning to be. I didn't need that kind of trouble. A few days later, I told my buddy. He didn't believe me at first, thought I was just exaggerating. But a week after that, we got stoned and decided to go back. Like idiots. We didn't stop or slow down, we just drove by his place with the horn blaring the whole way. Full volume. Long, loud, obnoxious. His truck was there. Lights were off. Nobody came out. We didn't hang around. Just laughed like it was some prank and kept driving. But I never went back alone. That road, that property, it stuck with me. Not like ghosts or monsters or anything. Just real human danger. I still think about it sometimes. That calm threat. The way he asked about the gun like he was deciding what he could get away with. The hills were silent that night. No houses nearby. No one to call for help. If I hadn't driven off when I did, if I'd opened the door or rolled the window down further, I don't know what he would have done. And that's the part that still gets me. Not knowing what could have happened. Because out there, in the dark, miles from anyone, anything can happen. And no one would ever know. It was meant to be just a quiet weekend away. Me and 7 friends, a mix of schoolmates and people we'd met at uni, decided to go hiking and camping out in the Peak District. We'd been planning it for weeks. hoping for a calm winter break. Maybe some snow, but not too much, just enough to make it feel wintry and calm. You know, fresh air, no phones, no city noise. It was supposed to be a reset. When we arrived, the sky was overcast, a dull gray that just sat there. It had been snowing lightly in the morning, but by the time we got to the trailhead, it had stopped. We were all in decent gear, thick coats, hiking boots, gloves, hats. Most of our faces were buried behind scarves or hoods, and if I'm honest, once we were all moving, we all kind of looked the same from behind. We didn't think much of it. We had no signal, so we stuck close. You didn't really want to wander off alone in that kind of weather. The trail we picked wasn't too intense. It was supposed to loop around and bring us back to a small car park where our van was waiting. We got a fire going in a clearing near the middle of the route, set up camp, cooked some food, the usual stuff. It wasn't late, maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon, when the wind started to pick up and snow began falling hard, like sideways snow, thick flakes stinging your eyes. We broke camp quick. No one wanted to get stuck out there, not in that. We lined up and started heading back. 8 of us, all wrapped up, barely talking because the wind made it useless to try. Everyone had their hoods up, heads down, feet moving. The snow kept falling heavier, and the trail started getting hard to follow. Trees looked the same in all directions. Still, we kept walking. After maybe an hour of trudging through the snow, I heard shouting behind me, sudden and loud, the kind that makes your chest freeze. I turned and saw one of the girls, Anna, waving her arms and yelling something I couldn't catch. A few of us stopped. A few kept walking. Then someone ahead pointed and we saw it. A figure in a green coat sprinting off to the left, crashing through the snow-covered undergrowth, away from the path. We stood there, trying to make sense of what just happened. Anna caught up, out of breath, eyes wide. She started pointing where the guy had run off. We all kind of stood in a circle, trying to piece it together. Apparently, she'd been walking near the back and started talking to the guy in the green coat, thinking it was James, who had a green coat. She said something casual, something dumb like, "This snow's a nightmare," and the guy didn't answer. She looked up and realized it wasn't James. Wasn't anyone she knew. Just some older guy, maybe mid-40s, face half covered but clearly not one of us. She said he didn't say a word, just kept walking like he'd been with us the whole time. No backpack, no gear, just the coat. And he'd been right behind us, right behind her, for who knows how long. The panic hit all of us at the same time. How long had he been with us? Was he at the camp? Was he walking with us all morning? Had he eaten near us? No one remembered him joining. No one remembered seeing his face. But thinking back, none of us had really looked closely at each other. With the coats and the wind and the snow, it was just heads down, keep moving. And the more we thought about it, the worse it got. There were moments earlier when we thought someone was off to the side of the group, walking slightly behind, just far enough to not draw attention. Maybe we thought it was one of us taking pictures or peeing in the woods or adjusting their boots. You notice movement in the corner of your eye, and you just assume. We tried to count ourselves again. 1, 2, 3, 8. Still 8. So how was there a 9th? That's when it hit me how easy it had been for him to blend in. We were all bundled up, faces hidden. No one would have noticed an extra figure in that group unless they really paid attention. And in that weather, no one was paying attention to anything except the ground in front of them. After the guy ran off, we didn't go after him. No one even thought to. I think we were just frozen. Not from the cold, but from the sudden realization that for hours, maybe the entire day, we'd had a stranger walking with us. We stood around for a bit, trying to figure out what to do. We couldn't stay there. The snow was getting worse, visibility dropping fast. So we kept walking, faster now, sticking closer together. Heads swiveling constantly, eyes checking the trees around us. Every sound felt wrong. Every gust of wind, every creak from a tree branch. Eventually, we reached the van. We piled in, slammed the doors, and sat in silence. No one spoke for a long time, just the sound of the heater and wet boots squeaking on the floor. When we finally talked about it, tried to piece together the day, it got worse. A few people remembered seeing a ninth shadow around the fire earlier. One of the girls swore she handed a water bottle to someone she thought was James, but James didn't remember that. Someone else said they thought someone was sleeping near the edge of the tents but didn't check. We looked through our photos from the trip. Nothing clear.
No faces.
Just groups of bodies, heads down, moving through the trees. Maybe a dark blur here or there. Maybe just tricks of the snow. We never reported it. What would we even say? Some guy followed us through the woods all day, and we only noticed when he ran off? There wasn't a crime, technically. He didn't hurt anyone, didn't say anything, didn't take anything. But that's the part that gets under your skin. The silence. The fact that he didn't do anything, didn't say anything. He just joined in, as if he belonged, as if he wanted to be part of the group or watch the group. After that trip, I couldn't shake the feeling for weeks. Every time I saw someone in a crowd with their face covered, I looked twice. I kept thinking about how easy it had been, how none of us noticed, how he could have done anything if he wanted to. I still don't understand why he left when he did. Maybe Anna spooked him. Maybe he realized he was about to be caught. Maybe he didn't care and just thought it was time to go. We never saw him again. Never found any trace of him. Just a figure in a green coat who walked with us through the snow like he belonged there. And the thing is, I don't think about him every day. Not anymore. But sometimes when I'm walking in a group, I count the people around me. Not because I'm afraid exactly, just because now I know it's possible to miss someone who shouldn't be there. And that's what stays with you, not the fear, the fact that it happened and we never even knew. My house sits right at the edge of town, surrounded by woods that feel like they've been there forever. There's a narrow road that runs in front of our property, just one lane wide, and it curves down toward a couple of small fishing lakes tucked away behind the trees. The road's not busy. Barely any cars ever come through. And if they do, it's usually someone who lives nearby or someone who got lost and ended up back there by mistake. Our driveway is long, real long, and when it snows, it turns into this endless white tunnel. In the winter, everything goes quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like it's pressing against your ears. This happened a couple years ago, on one of those cold mornings when school had a 2-hour delay. I was home alone, no one else awake, and the house was dead silent except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the wood floors. I had to walk out to the bus stop by myself. It was already light out, but it wasn't sunny. The sky was white, the ground was white, even the trees were pale with frost. No wind, just stillness, the kind that makes you feel like something's watching, even when you know nothing's there. I bundled up and stepped outside. The cold hit me right in the chest. My boots crunched into the icy driveway as I walked. The snow wasn't deep, but it had that crust on top that makes a hard cracking sound with every step. Our driveway cuts through a stretch of flat yard before it hits the road. On the other side of that road is a small drop-off and then the woods. Not deep woods, but thick enough that once you go a little in, you can't see the road anymore. I'd been in them plenty of times, even fished the lakes at the bottom of the hill in the summer. But they're different in winter. They look dead, but somehow more alive at the same time. I got to the end of the driveway and stood there waiting for the bus. Usually I'd hear birds, or at least the wind through the trees, but that morning everything was dead silent. No birds, no wind, not even the sound of cars from the highway miles away, just nothing. It was the kind of silence where even your own breathing sounds too loud. That's when I heard it. A bell, not loud, Not deep, more like one of those tiny ones you can hold in your hand and ring with your fingers. Came from behind me, just a quick little ding, clear as day. I thought maybe it was something on my coat or something in the snow, but the sound wasn't muffled at all. It was sharp right behind me. I stood still. My heart started beating faster. Then I heard breathing, deep, heavy, fast, right next to my ear. I turned around, but no one was there. Nothing. Just the long stretch of driveway and the snow-covered yard. No tracks, no people, no movement. I spun around in a full circle, trying to see if someone had sprinted off, but my yard's flat and open. If someone had run, I would have seen them. There were no trees close enough to hide behind, and the snow would have shown their footprints anyway. I stood there for what felt like forever. My eyes scanned every inch of the woods across the street, every bush, every shadow, but there was nothing. No animals, no movement, just silence again. Eventually the bus came and I got on like normal. I didn't say anything to anyone. Even now, years later, I still don't know what it was. Probably nothing. Maybe my mind playing tricks on me. But the sound of that bell and the breathing still come back to me sometimes, especially when I'm standing in the same spot. It just didn't make sense. There was no place for someone to hide, and the sound was so close. I remember my ears actually felt the air move, like someone had exhaled right next to me. And I know what I felt. The breathing wasn't just a sound, it was there, right at my neck. It still makes me a little nervous walking out there in the mornings, especially on those silent days. The bus stops in the same place, and nothing's ever happened again. But I always glance over my shoulder now. Every time. Another morning, not long after that, something else happened. This wasn't strange like the bell, but it scared me more in a way because it was real. It was still dark out way before sunrise. Not even that early, but in winter it stays black out till almost 7:30. I stepped outside like usual, the porch light behind me, and started walking down the driveway. Our cars were parked to the left, and my mom's SUV was closest to the front. I was walking to the right of it, just kind of groggy and not really thinking. The second I stepped past the front of the car, a loud crashing sound exploded out in front of me, like something huge smashing through the brush. And before I could even process it, this massive buck came flying across the road, right in front of my face. I mean inches. I didn't even see its body, just the flash of its antlers and the blur of motion. I could feel the wind of it rushing by, and the force knocked me back a step. It was gone as fast as it came, crashing down into the trees across the street and disappearing like it had never been there. I just stood there, stunned. I could barely breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I don't even know how I didn't scream. It felt like getting sideswiped by a train made of muscle and horns. I never even heard it coming. No warning. It must have been bedded down near the woods or behind the car, and when I stepped close, it panicked. I think if I had stepped forward 1 second earlier, it would have hit me full on. Those antlers could have killed me. It wasn't just a little deer. It was one of those big old bucks, the kind people mount on their walls. I didn't get a good look at its face or anything, just those horns flashing in the dark and the thud of its hooves. After that morning, I started carrying a flashlight with me. Even if the porch light's on, there are shadows that feel like they can hide anything. I learned real fast that just because you don't see something doesn't mean it's not right there, waiting. The woods can hold things so close to you, and you'd never know. Both times I was alone. Both times it was dead quiet. And both times it felt like something was too close, closer than it should have been. I don't think about the bell every day anymore, and the deer was just nature being itself. But standing out there at the end of the driveway still gives me a weird feeling, especially in winter when the world goes still. When the snow covers everything and the wind dies down, it's like sound travels differently. Like you can hear things from farther away or too close. I still live in the same house. I still take the same walk down the same driveway. I've seen the lakes freeze over, seen animal tracks cross the road, even spotted coyotes at the edge of the woods. But nothing has ever felt like that morning when I heard the bell. And nothing has ever made me jump like that buck. Out here, things don't happen in big dramatic ways. It's the quiet moments that get you, the stillness that feels just a little off. Most people wouldn't think twice about a little bell or a flash of antlers in the dark. But when you live at the edge of the woods, you pay attention. You learn to trust the things you feel, even if you can't prove them. That's just how it is out here.